My name's Detective Pierce. Private investigator. Freelance, mostly. Sometimes the police bring me in when something doesn't quite fit the usual categories. When paperwork can't explain the noise coming from the dark. That's how I ended up in the warehouse district, on the edge of the city. An industrial maze of metal, dust, and broken sodium lights that made the night look older than it was. The call came from a man named Keller, head of a private logistics company. He sounded exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He told me they'd been having break-ins at night. Nothing stolen. Nothing damaged. Just shipments showing up on the records that didn't exist. "I've checked the cameras myself," he said. "A van pulls in every night around 3. No plates. Parked just long enough for the cameras to catch movement near the loading dock. But when my guys get in at 6, there's nothing. No boxes. No tire tracks. Just the van's reflection in the rain." At first, I thought it was a glitch, some low-resolution feed catching phantom lights from passing trucks. But Keller swore the footage was real. He even sent me clips from 3 different angles. Same timestamp. Same van. Same nothing. The next night, I drove down myself. The industrial park was quiet, except for the hum of power lines and the distant groan of a freight train. Keller met me at the security booth, his tie loose, his eyes glassy. He offered me coffee that smelled like burnt plastic and pointed toward the yard. "That's Dock 3, he said. "That's where it always stops." The place was huge. Corrugated steel walls, endless rows of stacked pallets, forklifts asleep under tarps. A single light buzzed above Dock 3, casting a cone of pale yellow onto the wet pavement. I set up my camera near the chain-link fence, facing the entrance. No backup, no team. Just me, the rain, and the kind of silence that feels like it's listening back. By 2:45, the city around the district was dead quiet. No headlights, no voices, just the occasional drip of water from broken gutters. At 3:06 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I looked up from the monitor. And there it was. A white van. No markings, no plate. Rolling through the gate like it belonged there. The headlights were dim, too dim for the wet asphalt to reflect properly. It stopped right under Dock 3's light, engine idling in total silence. The side door slid open, slow and deliberate. I zoomed in. A figure stepped out, tall, wearing what looked like a work jacket, but the image distorted around him. Not like bad video compression. Like heat haze, rippling, bending the air. He walked toward the dock. Then doors still opened behind him. And then, he just vanished. Not out of frame. Not behind something. Gone. I kept the camera steady. Rain hissed on the metal roof above me. No movement. No sound but the low hum of the van's engine. A few seconds later, the van door closed, by itself. It reversed slowly, turned toward the gate, and drove out the way it came. When I checked the playback, the timestamp had jumped. 2 minutes gone. Just static. When I looked up again, Dock 3 was empty. No lights inside. No signs of entry. But on the wet ground where the van had stopped, there wasn't a single tire mark. Not one. By morning, the footage looked worse. Not just distorted, degraded. As if something had worn away the digital signal overnight. The timestamp flickered, the frames blurred together, and the van's outline shifted. Every time I paused, the shape wasn't quite the same. Keller leaned over my shoulder, staring at the laptop screen. He didn't say a word for a while. Then quietly, "That's the same van from the other nights." He pulled out a stack of printed screenshots. All from the past week. Same time. Same van. Same moment the side door opened, but the silhouette inside was different each night. Sometimes taller. Sometimes bent forward. Once, it looked like two people. Keller rubbed his eyes and said, "My warehouse is supposed to be locked. The only deliveries come during daylight. Nothing else." I told him I'd stay one more night. He didn't argue. He just nodded and handed me a keycard. That afternoon, I checked the site in daylight. Dock 3 looked harmless, an ordinary loading area, streaked with grime, smelling of rust and oil. Inside, the warehouse stretched like an empty lung. Rows of steel shelving. Forklifts covered in dust. And a faint echo when I spoke, like something large and hollow was breathing just out of sync with me. The only odd thing was near the back wall, a section of concrete floor that had been patched recently. No paperwork about it. Keller swore no one had repaired anything. I knelt down and ran my hand over it. The concrete was smoother, colder. When I pressed my ear against it, there was a faint hum, like a transformer running under the floor. But Keller said there were no cables beneath. Only soil. That night I came back early. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavier, like the sky was holding its breath. I parked across the street, inside the security booth, camera ready, every sensor active. At 2:59 a.m., my motion alarm triggered again. Same pattern. The van rolled in silently, headlights barely touching the wet asphalt. But this time, I caught the driver. A man, mid-40s maybe, wearing coveralls and gloves. He stepped out, walked to the back of the van, and unlocked the cargo doors. I expected boxes, tools, maybe equipment. But when the doors opened, there was nothing. Just a hollow interior, dark and echoing. He stood there for a few seconds, staring into the empty space. Then, one by one, he started miming movements, as if lifting invisible crates, carrying them to the dock, and setting them down. Each movement precise. Mechanical. Practiced. The dock door opened automatically, though Keller had disabled the controls. The man stepped inside with his invisible cargo and didn't come back out. After 10 minutes, the van's engine started by itself. The door slammed shut, and it drove away, without a driver. I waited until dawn, then searched the dock myself. No footprints. No signs of entry. Nothing but faint smears on the concrete, as if something wet had been dragged inside and evaporated. When Keller arrived, he looked worse than before. He didn't even ask what I'd seen. He just said, "They're still sending invoices for those deliveries. Same dates. Same van ID." I asked who they were. He hesitated. Then said, "The clients. But the companies on the invoices don't exist anymore. They shut down years ago." I spent the next morning in Keller's cramped office. Stacks of papers leaned against the walls, and the air smelled like dust and stale coffee. He slid a folder across the desk. Invoices, delivery logs, time stamps. All legitimate, at least on paper. The problem was the company names. Every single client listed had dissolved years ago. Some bankrupt, some merged, some never existed to begin with. But the transactions were current, processed through modern billing software. Money was being moved. I traced the payment routes. Each one led to an inactive account number, placeholders used for system testing. But the software was generating them automatically, assigning them to real dates, and feeding them into the system like they were part of an active network. And every one of those fake deliveries was scheduled for 3 a.m. It didn't make sense. I'd seen financial fraud before. This wasn't fraud. There was no benefit. No theft. No gain. Just meaningless motion. Something, or someone, wanted the record to exist. When I showed Keller, he looked pale. He whispered, "You don't understand. These invoices are signed." He handed me a paper with a scanned signature, a name I didn't recognize. Harlan J. Dorsey. Below it, the title, Distribution Supervisor. "Who's that?" I asked. Keller shook his head. "There's no one by that name in our system. There never was." I took a copy of the signature and ran it through the city business registry that afternoon. Dorsey had worked for a logistics company 20 years ago. One that used the same address as Keller's building before the ownership changed hands. He died in 2003. I drove back to the warehouse at sunset. The city lights bled into the horizon, washing the skyline in rust-colored haze. As I passed the security booth, the guard, a quiet guy named Miguel, waved me down. "Hey, detective," he said. "You're not gonna believe this." He showed me his screen. On the overnight camera feed, between 3:10 and 3:12 a.m., one frame caught something unusual, not the van this time. A person, standing behind Dock 3. No lights, no movement, just a still figure near the loading ramp. Too far from the van to be the driver. Too tall, too still. Miguel swore he hadn't seen it in real time. The feed had only updated when he rewound the footage. I went to the spot in daylight. Nothing. But near the back wall, I noticed faint markings on the metal siding, letters scratched into the paint, low to the ground, half erased by rust. Dorsey. The letters were uneven, cut shallow, like they'd been carved with a dull key. And below them, in smaller lines, another word. Due. That night, I didn't wait in the car. I went inside. The warehouse smelled of metal and rain. Each step echoed too long, bouncing back from places that didn't look far enough away. I kept my flashlight low, the beam sliding across the concrete until it landed on the patched section of floor I'd noticed earlier. The hum beneath it was louder now. A vibration I could feel through my boots, steady, rhythmic, like machinery buried deep below. Then I heard it. A dull thud from somewhere near Dock 3. I froze. Another thud, softer, like a heavy box being dropped on the floor. I turned off the flashlight and waited. The air changed, heavier, thicker, filled with static from the nearby power lines outside. And then, footsteps. Slow, dragging, uneven. I turned the light back on. Nothing. Just the reflection of my own beam across the metal racks. Then a shadow flickered on the far wall, moving left to right, steady, deliberate. I followed it, but when I reached the corner, there was nothing there. Except a clipboard. Lying on the floor, covered in dust. I picked it up. A single delivery form attached. Date last night. Destination Dock 3. Contents: return shipment, Dorsey account. And under driver's signature. There was nothing but a fingerprint. By morning, I had copies of every delivery record tied to the Dorsey account. The timestamps were identical, same hour, same route, same digital signature. But the server paths didn't match. They weren't stored in the active network. They came from an archive system that, according to IT, had been decommissioned in 2012. I met with the system's manager, a quiet man named Lewis who looked like he hadn't slept in days. He led me to a small room behind the main office. Dusty racks of servers, most unplugged, cables hanging loose. Only one tower was still powered, a black metal unit marked with faded tape. Backup A. Why is this one still on? I asked. He shrugged. No one's touched it for years. We just left it running. Every time we shut it down, the billing system crashes. He typed in a maintenance command. The screen flickered, then filled with text. folders labeled by date, thousands of them, spanning decades. But the recent ones, the ones from this year, were stored under a strange directory. /returns/doc3/. Lewis frowned. That folder shouldn't exist. He opened one of the files. It was a scanned manifest, identical to the physical ones I'd seen, complete with Dorsey's signature. And then another. And another. Thousands of identical manifests. Each referencing deliveries that never happened. Each stamped and verified by automated software that wasn't supposed to be active anymore. When I looked closer, I noticed something else. Each file had a secondary metadata tag, a note embedded deep in the structure. Not visible to normal users. It read, "Processed by HJD." Dorsey's initials. That night, I sat in my car across from the warehouse again. No van. No movement. But the feeling was the same, that low, mechanical pulse under the ground, like the earth was quietly breathing. Around 3:07 a.m., the lights flickered. The street lamps dimmed, then brightened again. Through the windshield, I saw a faint reflection, the loading bay doors of Dock 3 beginning to roll open on their own. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The air was cold and damp, the kind of cold that sticks to your throat. Inside, the floor gleamed under the weak fluorescent light. The clipboard I'd found earlier was gone. I followed the vibration. It seemed stronger near the back wall. There, behind a stack of old pallets, I noticed a maintenance hatch I hadn't seen before. Bolted shut, but recently disturbed, faint scratches around the hinges. Someone had opened it not long ago. A low draft came through the seams, warm air, mixed with the smell of oil and static. I crouched down and pressed my ear to the metal. Behind it, I could hear movement. A slow, steady hum. And beneath that, a rhythmic sound, too regular to be wind or machinery. Almost like wheels turning over gravel. I backed away. Then something thudded against the hatch from the inside. Once. Twice. Then silence. I didn't stay to hear a third. The next morning, Keller called me in. He looked shaken, holding a printed memo. "Detective," he said quietly, "we received a delivery this morning." I frowned. "From who?" He didn't answer. He just handed me the manifest. It was dated today. Signed, H.J. Dorsey. Contents, final return. And below the line for delivered to, it said one word, in small, typed letters. Pierce. I didn't sleep that night. The manifest lay on my desk under a single lamp, the paper yellowed around the edges as if it had come from another time. The ink was fresh. And there it was again, the signature, H. J. Dorsey. The man who'd been dead for 11 years. I drove back to the logistics office before dawn. No lights this time, no hum from below. Dock 3 was sealed. The padlock looked new, almost polished, like someone wanted to make sure no one went inside again. I tried to get Keller on the phone, but he wasn't answering. When I arrived at his office, the blinds were drawn. A single delivery box sat on his desk, plain, unmarked, taped shut. Next to it was another manifest. Recipient Pierce. Sender, H.J. Dorsey. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. The air in the office felt heavier than before, like the silence itself was waiting for me to move. I looked at the security cameras, all blank screens. The recording system was powered off. When I opened the box, I expected papers. Maybe another set of false manifests. But inside was only one thing, a radio transceiver, old and worn, the kind used in delivery trucks decades ago. The power indicator was blinking. And the frequency display was locked on a single channel, 117.8 MHz. I turned the volume up. At first static. Then a faint voice, distant, mechanical, looping every few seconds. Delivery completed. Return confirmed. Delivery completed. Return confirmed. Over and over. Until, for a moment, the static shifted, and I heard something new. Pierce. You're next. I dropped the radio. The sound continued, faint and distorted, even after I pulled the batteries. That night, I filed my final report, short, incomplete, the kind they bury under administrative anomaly. But I didn't go home. I sat in my car, engine off, watching the street outside my apartment. At 3:07 a.m., a van passed. No lights, no logo. Just a white silhouette sliding through the fog. It didn't stop, didn't slow down. But as it rolled by, I saw the faintest trace of lettering under the grime, the outline of old paint barely visible in the reflection of a street light. Dorsey Logistics. And under it, almost gone, a slogan that the company hadn't used since the 90s. We deliver everything, even the unclaimed. Pierce did not report any further incidents. A month later, he was transferred to another department. Dorsey Logistics was officially liquidated according to documents dated the same day he received the last package. No one ever saw the white van again. But from time to time, a record appears in the Transport Control archives. Delivery confirmed. No address. No recipient.